Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. What happens to the US economy when over $5 trillion, yes, you heard that right, to be specific, $5.2 trillion in stimulus actually wears off? Now, keep in mind that the economic recovery that we are seeing right now has actually been propped up by all the spending that has been done in the past 12 months. Now, can the economy continue growing on its own without all of this spending? That was the focus of this article that you see on your screen from the Washington Post. What happens to the economy when $5.2 trillion in stimulus wears off? We'll provide you with a link to this article in the description section below. I'll quote from the article. The US government spent at least $5.2 trillion to combat the pandemic. It stands as one of the most expensive, ambitious experiments in US history, and it succeeded. So what was the impact of all of this, everyone? The GDP numbers that will be released later this month are likely to show that the economy has recovered from the pandemic losses. In fact, the non-partisan CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, expects the economy to grow by 7.4% in 2021 and 3.1% in 2022 adjusted for inflation. This would be the strongest two-year growth spurt that the US has put together in 37 years. Now, the big question is, will this continue? Folks, according to the CBO, this will not continue. The CBO now projects growth will slow to 1.1% in 2023 and an average of 1.2% in 2024 and 2025. This is the slowest sustainable growth that the US has seen outside of a recession, according to the Commerce Department. When you look at data going back all the way to 1929, before the pandemic, the CBO had projected steady growth of between 1.6 and 1.8% rather than a dramatic boom and a leveling off, which is what we are seeing right now. So let's be very clear. The economy will be bigger. Many Americans will indeed be better off, especially those who already have their jobs back. But this fading boom, if you want to call it that, will cause its own share of problems because many businesses, many homeowners, and many individuals, specifically individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality, might find themselves out of a job, might find themselves with slowing wages, with lower wages, and they might find themselves saddled with higher debt. In fact, let's see this image on your screen. The pandemic spending gave the economy a lasting boost. Let's take a look at that dashed line, which is the pre-pandemic trend. So again, that dashed line is the pre-pandemic trend. And the effect of the pandemic relief programs has actually resulted in an increase in the economy in that red portion that you see, an improvement in the economy. And the blue portion on the right side of the chart would have been the GDP, the gross domestic product, assuming Congress had done nothing. In other words, things would have improved, but they would not have improved as fast. Unfortunately, we are going to see a reduction in the economy. First, let's take a look at how much money we actually spent. The $5.2 trillion total that I mentioned at the start of this video is the estimated impact of the federal deficit of about $5.9 trillion in relief that was authorized by Congress. Let's show you this chart on your screen. The COVID-19 spending surge will soon dissipate. Now, let's take a look at the 2020 section. You'll see that red portion that shows the effect of all the stimulus programs, the CARES Act, and all the other stimulus programs passed in 2020. In 2021 so far, we've had the American Rescue Plan. Now, you'll see the red portion. There is a red portion for 2022 and 2023 because some of the spending has been set aside for future years. Now, take a look at the dashed portion, which represents the projected deficit prior to the pandemic, and take a look at the blue portion on the right side, which shows the deficit assuming Congress did nothing. Obviously, as you can see, the deficit is higher because we have spent a significant amount of money. Now, the fact is that this $5.2 trillion includes everything from the $835 billion Paycheck Protection Program and $811 billion for the 3 stimulus checks that have been received so far, all the way down to $58 million for the National Archives. So all of this is essentially tracked. All the spending has been tracked. So what's the bottom line? Where did all this money go? Let's take a look at this chart on your screen. where the pandemic relief money actually went. Let's take a look at the deficit impact of all the authorized spending. Let's take a look at the loan and grant programs, the Paycheck Protection Program, over $800 billion. Income support, meaning the unemployment benefits, including the $300 a week federal booster, $689 billion. The EIDL loans, $55 billion. Support for the airline industry was $55 billion. Let's take a look at tax policy, loosening the limits on business losses, $141 billion. And as we go down, you'll see that big red bubble that corresponds to direct payments, meaning the stimulus checks, $1,400 stimulus checks, they accounted for $411 billion. The $1,200 stimulus checks, they accounted for $294 billion. $600 stimulus checks accounted for $164 billion. Now, let's compare that by way of scale with the net worth and the increase in the net worth of various rich people. Let's take a look at Jeff Bezos. In January 2020, his net worth was $112 billion. And Jeff Bezos in July 2021, his net worth increased by $100 billion up to $212 billion. Elon Musk from $28.5 billion to $180 billion in July 2021. So let's put everything into perspective. $5.2 trillion is about 25 times the expected net worth of Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon. And this is a significant number. During the pandemic from February 2020 to May 2021, 7.6 million existing homes and condos were sold in the US. With $5.2 trillion, the US government could have bought every single one of them twice. Yes, you heard that right. Could have bought every single one of them twice, and the federal government would still have some money left over to upgrade the furniture in the houses. With that much cash, the government could pay down every dollar of debt held by the bottom 50% of all Americans, including mortgages, credit cards, medical and student debt, which all totals up to $5.1 trillion. Here's a quote from Senior Vice President Mark Goldwyn over at CRFB. He said this: "It's clearly larger than what was needed to restore the economy back to its previous trajectory." So where do things stand right now? A significant amount of money has been spent. And the big question now is, will the stimulus have a lasting effect? The short answer to that question is yes. The good news is US economic output, also known as GDP or gross domestic product, will be higher in the next few years, like I showed you earlier, than it would have been had the COVID response, had the economic response to stimulus not been as aggressive. But there's a catch. Americans don't really look at the level of GDP. You don't care. You just want to put food on the table. You want to make rent. You want to keep the lights on. What you're concerned with is, what is the change to your life? Is your life better now than it was in the previous quarter? And unfortunately, it looks like while life may be better now, it may not necessarily be significantly better in the future because GDP is going to slow down. What is the bottom line for you? The bottom line for you is you've got to keep improving your skills, you've got to keep learning new things, and you've got to become more productive and or start a new business so that as the economy slows down, you can stay competitive and you can earn a good income and you can try and live the American dream. This will lead to faster growth for certain industries, but some industries will be left behind. Are we likely to have what's considered a soft landing? Can we get back on our feet gradually? Well, folks, it really depends on which career you're in, but the best thing you can do is learn more skills and try and diversify your sources of income. Here's an important quote from this article. No matter how rosy things look in the short term, nobody should make long-term investments on the assumption that wages will grow 4% every year or home values will grow 13% forever. Without big changes such as the passage of President Biden's infrastructure and families plan, the economy is set for a bit of a bumpy landing after the boom of 2021 and 2022. One that will likely come just as the 2024 presidential campaigns are shifting into gear. This is all going to collide in 2024 during the next presidential election. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I want you to know I greatly appreciate you, and I work hard on this channel every single day to bring you the latest news. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Thank you. Bye.